All right. Well, Life of Christ time. So last time I told you that we would be looking at Zacchaeus tonight, but in looking at the chronology of it all, in order to try to keep as best we can with the chronology of the events, I think it's best to take the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead first, and then we'll look at the story of Jesus visiting Zacchaeus next week. So tonight, one of the greatest miracle, probably the greatest miracle in the New Testament outside of the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, is the resurrection of Lazarus here, and that's what we'll have a chance to look at tonight. So find your place in John. We're going to begin at the end of John chapter 10. Primarily we'll be in John 11 tonight. We're going to pick up, just for setting and context, we're going to pick up at the end of John chapter 10. So find your place there. All right, everybody with us. John 10, I'm in verse 40. And he went away again beyond the Jordan to the place where John was baptizing at first, and there he stayed. Then many came to him and said, John performed no sign, but all the things that John spoke about this man were true, and many believed in him there. Okay, so this begins a brief section that we're going to look at, and we're just going to look at a couple of instances in it that's known as Jesus' later Perean ministry. So the events that take place here are known as the later Perean ministry of Jesus. So where was the area of Perea located? And I didn't give you a good map tonight, but I gave you a map earlier. If you have your Bible study notes, that colored map of Israel, if you pull out your Bible study notes before, that's it right there. So let me see that a second. You can give me a notebook and all. No, because Mark will tear it up if you do that, won't he? So if you have your map, this purple area here, that's Perea. Okay, and that has to do with a Roman province, and that was a Roman designation of this area. But this is, you see, the Jordan River runs right up through, dividing Judea from Perea. Now, where he's going to be, where he's going is, if you look. Can you see where it says Bethany beyond the Jordan? Just north of the Dead Sea in the purple area. Do you see that on your map? Okay, that's where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. He's going there. That's basically what it says in verse 40. So he's going there. Now, he's going to get interrupted from his little respite, and he's going to go to Bethany, not Bethany beyond the Jordan, but Bethany near Jerusalem, because that's where Lazarus was sick and ultimately died. So that I do have a good map for that for you, but you can see if you go almost due west from Bethany beyond the Jordan, you see Bethpage, you see Jericho, and then kind of southwest of that, you see Bethany, and then it's right next, it's southeast of Jerusalem, but only a couple of miles. All right, Phil, put that map that I've got up there. There we go. Okay, so you see Bethany there. This is where Lazarus lived. Also, since Lazarus had two sisters, their two sisters were Mary and Martha, so they are all from Bethany. Bethany is going to be an important place as we approach Passion Week, because that's kind of where the last week, that's kind of where Jesus is going to set up his shop. that's not a good term. That's where he's going to set up his headquarters for the last week he's on this earth, Passion Week. So you'll see him. He'll go into Jerusalem during the day and he'll do some things, but he usually comes back at night and he stays in Bethany. He usually doesn't stay in Jerusalem at night. He usually stays in Bethany. Bethany, if you can picture it this way, you've got the Mount of Olives, and can you see that big red balloon is kind of hiding the M, but you see where it says Mount of Olives, and there's a little crosshairs there. All right, so this is the Mount of Olives. So I want you to picture that. Okay, so if standing on the Mount of Olives, if you're on the west side looking west, you're looking directly over the Kidron Valley into Jerusalem. If you're on the other side of the mountain, you're in Bethany. So it's literally just on the other side of the mountain from Jerusalem, on the other side of the Mount of Olives. Now put that picture up there, please. There we go. So this picture is taken standing on the Mount of Olives, but it's standing looking towards Jerusalem. You can see the Dome of the Rock, see the big gold dome there. That's the Temple Mount. There's a mosque there now, but that's where the temple would have been. So if you enter Jerusalem, that's how you would do it. Okay, so, but if you're looking, in other words, so this is looking westward off of the Mount of Olives. I hope yeah, that's right. So if you turn and go look the other way on the mountain, that's Bethany. If you come off the mountain that side and go to the other side, now you're in Bethany. That's where Lazarus is. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to give you a little context of where this is taking place. All right. So it's east of Jericho, Transjordan. That's where Perea is, and he's going to travel to Bethany. Why did Jesus withdraw to this area of Perea? To rest, that's right. There's a couple of reasons. Primarily, it was to rest. It was going to be the last break before the cross. He's literally days away from the cross at this point. And so, you ever do that? Like you got some major ordeal coming up, and you say, okay, let's take a few days and just kind of rest before the ordeal. I used to try to take a vacation like the week before VBS, and then come back. And then we got to where we thought, no, that I need a vacation worse after VBS, because I'd take my vacation and then I would come back and feel like at the week after VBS, I'd feel like I needed another vacation. So, but this seems to be Jesus' idea. I'll go here and we'll get one last break, one last rest before the cross. It was also it had some historical / sentimental value to Jesus, because this is where Jesus was baptized. This is where John was baptizing in Bethany beyond the Jordan, and this is where Jesus was baptized. So, perhaps he wants to go back to, where it all began. Go back to the beginning. He's about to come to the end of his earthly ministry, so maybe he feels it edifying to go back to where his earthly ministry began with his baptism there. In any event, he doesn't get to stay resting very long, because he gets a call or gets a message that your friend Lazarus is very sick. You should come see him. Now, this time in Jesus' ministry, this Perean ministry, we're only going to look at a couple of events just for time's sake. But there was a lot of different things that took place in this Bible stories, parables, all kinds of things. So I'll give you a multiple choice here. I'll read this off, and you tell me if you think this is associated. One of these is not associated with Jesus' ministry in Perea. The rest are. You tell me if you think this is or is not. The story of the prodigal son, yes or no? Yes, it is. The healing of blind Bartimaeus, yes. The wedding at Cana, no. That was early on. That was the first miracle. So obviously then that would mean the story of the rich young ruler would be, as well as Jesus blessing the little children. So some of our most beloved Bible stories take place in this area of Perea in the last few days before Jesus is crucified. So it's pretty significant there. So that's all just kind of intro and setup before we actually get to the story of Jesus raising Lazarus. Any questions on that before we move on? All right, so we're going to read the story of the raising of Lazarus, and I'm going to read it in its entirety without stopping to talk about it, or not to talk about it very much anyway. So I'm going to take me a big swallow of water, and then you follow along with me, so we can cover the whole story, and then we'll back up and talk about it. All right, verse 1. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. And it was told that Mary, who anointed the Lord with it was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, the sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of Man may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in that place where he was. Thereafter this, he said to the disciples, let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you, and are you going there again? In other words, that's a bad idea, Jesus. They're trying to kill you there. Let's stay over here on this side of the Jordan. It'll be much safer. Verse 9, Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. These things he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. Then his disciples said, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well. In other words, they don't get it. They don't get that Jesus is speaking symbolically here. If he's just asleep, he'll wake up. However, verse 13, however, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that he was speaking about taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us go that we may die with him. I want to point out, this is the one that's often called Doubting Thomas, and we give him such a bad time at Easter because he said, I won't believe unless I see the nail prints in his hand and his side and the wound in his side. And we call him the man without faith and bash him pretty hard sometimes. But I would say that his faith might be stronger than any at this point, because they really believe that Jesus was going to Judea and be killed there. And Thomas's response is, let's go and die with him. Verse 17, when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Now Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. You catch a little bit of a rebuke there? Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live, and whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. And when he had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, the teacher has come and is calling for you. And as soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. And the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly and went out, followed her, saying, she is going to the tomb to weep there. Then when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, wait a minute. I heard that somewhere before. Where do you think she got that from? She got it from her sister. Now, I think there's a lesson in here. This is sweet little Mary. This is Mary that isn't Martha, that the sister that's cumbered about with much serving, trying to get dinner on the table, and Mary's just sitting at Jesus' feet, hanging on his every word, and Jesus says, Martha, you're worried about a lot of things, but Mary's figured out the most important thing, and I'm not going to take it away from her. It's Mary who's going to come and break a very expensive flask of perfume, of oil, and anoint Jesus prior to his death. This Mary that loved Jesus, and Jesus loved him. This Mary now is sounding a whole lot more like Martha. Martha, if you'd been, Jesus, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. So I think there's a warning, a couple of warnings here. It's a warning to not let our negative attitude affect other people, because negative talk is a cancer. It is contagious, and if you speak negative to your brothers and sisters, you will bring them down. But I think it's also a warning here to, if we look at the perspective of Mary, that careful who you're listening to. You got Jesus right in front of you. Jesus, the man that heals the sick, raise the dead. What does Mary say? She echoes her sister. Not echo the words of Jesus, echoes her sister. Lord, if you'd have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But Jesus is going to fix it all. So we're in 33. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. How many of you learned that Bible verse when you were in? Who wants to quote a scripture? Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. And some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. And Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. She doesn't sugarcoat it much, does she? Verse 40, Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. And I know that you always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. Now when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. All right. So let's talk just briefly about this. And this is like one of my standard funeral passages. I have half a dozen or 8 or 10 or so, kind of standard, if you don't request something special, you get one of my standard funeral texts. This is one of them. So I've kind of looked at it a lot from, words of comfort and encouragement. It's kind of good for me anyway to get to look at it with people who aren't necessarily currently grieving. We're not at a funeral, tonight. So we get to see and pull out some application that we might not necessarily pull out for a funeral message. So, true or false, was Jesus acquainted with this family prior to this event? He was. You pick up on that in verse 2. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother was Lazarus was sick. So this Mary. Also in John 10:38, we find Jesus at a supper, and Mary, remember Martha. That's the one where Martha's serving and Mary won't help, and Martha wants Jesus to come fuss at my sister for me. So he was acquainted with the family. He was friends with the family. So this was a unique. This wasn't just a random person that came to Jesus and said, "My brother's sick, come heal him." This was friends, close friends, it would appear. So he hears that your friend Lazarus is sick. He says, "Oh, that's too bad. He's not gonna die. It's for the glory of God." And what does he do at that point? He waits 2 more days. Now, why would he do that? Was he just trying to be mean? I mean, why would you do that? You think so? You think he's like, well, I'm a little too busy, so I'll just kind of hang around for a couple of days? Yeah, so it seems as though that the point he wanted to make could only be done with a resurrection. Jesus had healed people before. They'd seen him heal people. But this was going to be a more impressive miracle. He was testing his disciples to some extent. And by waiting until Lazarus is dead, and not just dead, but dead 4 days, it makes the miracle more impressive. It's one of the 7 signs that John builds his gospel around. The Gospel of John is built over around 7 signs and 7 I am statements. Frequently, the sign accompanies an I am statement. So here you have the sign, which is Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. What's the I am statement? I am the resurrection and the life. So it is. This miracle is going to be on a grander scale than just healing the sick. Verse 15, Jesus says, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. In other words, I'm glad I wasn't there. I'm glad he died. Now, take that in the context that it is. He's not saying I want him to stay dead. He's saying that only by his death can I perform this resurrection. Now, I wanted to draw your attention to verses 9 and 10 because Jesus is speaking in a little bit of symbolism here that we need to pull out and pick up on. So he says we're going to Judea. And they say, "Teacher, that's a bad idea." His disciples say, "That Jesus, that's a bad idea. They want to stone you there. It's dangerous." And Jesus says, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If one walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him." So here's what Jesus is saying. They say, "We can't go because it's dangerous. You're going to get hurt going over there." And Jesus said, people walk during the day when it's light because you can see where you're going and you don't stumble and get hurt. Ancients did not like the dark. They did not like nighttime. They tried very much to get to wherever they were going to sleep before dark so they could be in their dwelling before dark because, number one, you didn't have good lights. You might have a candle, you might have a torch, but it really didn't light up very much. The dark represented danger. There was obstacles in the way that you could trip over and fall and hurt yourself. There was wild animals that roamed around in the dark that could hurt you. There were thieves and bandits in the night that could hurt you. All the things that could hurt you was at night. But if you were in the daylight, you didn't have as much to worry about. It was a safer time. Jesus said, there's darkness in the world. There's darkness out there. And you're about to have a dark time because I'm about to be crucified. But while there's light, I'm the light of the world. I'm with you. In other words, you don't have to worry. They're not going to stone me. They're not going to hurt me until it's time. So if I'm with you, we don't have to worry. I think there's great application for us as well. It is a dark and scary world out there, and I think we could all say amen to that. But Jesus is the light of the world, and the light of the world lives in us because Jesus lives in us. So we don't have to be afraid. Greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. So that seems to be the idea that Jesus is making here. Questions on that? Okay, so as I said, we all in kindergarten learned the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. My question to you is, why did He weep? I think you're right. I think that's a big part of it. I think there's several reasons that you could say that he wept. I think He had a deep love for Lazarus and his family. That's obvious. So I think there was genuine human emotion involved here. He loved these people. These weren't strangers. These weren't casual acquaintances. These were deep, close friends. And he loved Lazarus, and He loved Mary and Martha and that family. And so there is genuine human emotion there. I do think it's interesting that he doesn't weep when he hears that Lazarus is dead. In other words, he doesn't get news, Lazarus, the one you love is dead, or he doesn't, he says to them in verse 15 that Lazarus is dead, and he doesn't just sit down and bust out crying. He's like, well, let's get up and go. Lazarus is dead, time to go. I mean, he seems to be keeping it together pretty good at that point. But when he sees the reaction of Mary and Martha, particularly Mary, sweet little Mary, the one that had sat at His feet, tender-hearted Mary, and she's losing it. She's weeping over her brother. Jesus weeps at this point. At the sight of Mary crying, Jesus cries. So I think that's part of it. But I think it's also the people's unbelief. Because he goes on to say, therefore, I'm in 33, when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her weeping, He groaned in the spirit and was troubled. But notice what she had said to Him right before this scene. He'd already been confronted by Martha, like before he even gets to town. Lord, if you'd have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. I may be overplaying Martha a little bit at that point. She's like, even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask. I mean, she still wants to believe, but she's still clearly upset that Jesus didn't rush right over there. If you'd only been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And what does He say? Martha, I'm the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Don't you believe this? And then there's sweet little Mary. And she doesn't say, Lord, I'm glad you're here. I know that everything's going to be all right once you're here. I know that, that you can do all things and you can bring my brother out of the grave. What does she say? Lord, if you'd have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And it seems like it was more their lack of faith, their unbelief that broke Jesus, that broke his heart. I only remember reading in the New Testament 2 times when Jesus wept, where it says Jesus wept. If you don't count, and I don't count the garden description because there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's talking about sweat, drops of blood and all. But where it just says Jesus wept, one is here, and the other when he rides into Jerusalem before he comes in to Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. He stops just short of the town and weeps over Jerusalem. Oh, Jerusalem, how I long to gather you under my wings as a mother hen does her chicks, but you wouldn't have it. You couldn't see that your time of visitation was at hand. So he weeps over Jerusalem. Why? Because of their unbelief and their rejection of God's Messiah. If you take this to be the same reason why he would be weeping, then it seems it would be the people's unbelief, particularly his own best friend. You would expect your best friends to believe. Maybe the stranger that doesn't know you, but surely the ones that are your best friends you would expect to believe. But instead he gets, if you'd have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Yes. Yes. Yeah. They still saw his power as somewhat limited. Yeah. Perhaps the cause of death itself, sin, he weeps for that. He says, take away the stone. And Martha says, Lord, that's not a good idea. Why is it not a good idea? He stinks. I actually have a sermon. I don't know if I've preached it here or not, but I've got a sermon called Why Lazarus Doesn't Stink Anymore. Martha says, that's not a good idea, Jesus. He stinks. He's been dead 4 days. Now, yeah, you're right. I mean, if Jesus says we're going to do it this way, it's always a good idea. Oh, yeah, I've had that conversation with the Lord too. Lord, that's not a good idea. But he always convinces me that it is. Yeah, I don't get a lot of opt-out cards with Jesus. I don't know about y'all, but I'm like, Lord, I don't know if this is such a good idea or not. He's like, well, I know, but I do, and we're going to do it anyway. So, yeah, or no, Lord, yeah, that's right. So what's significant about the fact that he'd been dead 4 days, other than he's stinking? But what's significant about 4 days? They knew he was dead. So, in other words, this was definitely going to be a resurrection, not a resuscitation. So if you have a heart attack, and the ambulance driver can get there fast enough, and you've been out of it for a couple of minutes, they can start CPR on you, theoretically, and there's a chance, maybe a good chance, that they can bring you back. Now, is that a resurrection? No, it's not a resurrection. We'd call that a resuscitation. Even though technically you might be dead because your heart stopped beating, you're not dead like Lazarus was dead for 4 days. So here's yes, sir. Yes, and that's a good point, and I was gonna bring that out if nobody did, but I'm glad that you did. So there was a Jewish belief that when someone died, the spirit of that person hovered over the body or around the body for 3 days before it departed on to Sheol, the place of the dead. You got to understand that, particularly in Old Testament times, this idea of an afterlife was very sketchy. It's not really until the intertestamental time that you really get a clear idea of heaven and hell and an afterlife that you can really say we have much detail about. For most of the Old Testament Jews, they believe that when you die, you went to Sheol, the place of the dead. Is it a good place? Is it a bad place? It's just kind of a shadowy underworld. Maybe, your experience there would have something to do with the life that you live, but nothing really spelled out in Scripture. All very vague, very gray. It's not until the New Testament that we get this clear picture of an afterlife. So there was this belief that the spirit of someone stayed around for 3 days before it departed to Sheol. So if you're going to do a resurrection, the idea being you got to do it in that 3 days because that's when the spirit is still there. So if they've been dead less than 3 days, you've got a chance of that spirit reanimating that body and the person coming back to life. After 3 days, the spirit goes on to Sheol and there's no hope. So it's been 4 days. The spirit, this is Jewish. I'm not saying this is the way it was. I'm saying this is what the Jews believed. Just like we believe a lot of homemade theology that ain't necessarily true. They believe stuff that wasn't necessarily true either. But in their way of thinking, it's been 4 days. The spirit is gone. He's rotting. The corpse is smelling. It's already decomposing. There's no hope for resurrection. But when Jesus shows up, there's always hope for resurrection in there. So that's the idea. Verse 39. Yeah, okay. He'd been dead 4 days. What's the main point of this miracle? What's Jesus doing to accomplish, other than just bringing his dead friend back to life, which there's got to be more to it than that. What's the point? Yes, sir. Right. Sure. It's a foreshadowing of his own resurrection, for sure. Yes, sir. Yeah. So it's, and John, includes it as one of the signs, accompanying signs of his of Jesus' ministry, that he is the Son of God. The key to the whole thing is in verse 25 when he says to Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life." So always in these signs, if you want to find the miracle, the purpose of the miracle, or the meaning behind the miracle, look at the "I am" statement. It will always give you the purpose. When Jesus feeds the multitude with the loaves and fishes, the purpose is, "I am the bread of life." When he heals the blind man, the purpose is, "I am the light of the world." Here he raises the dead man. Purpose being, "I am the resurrection and the life. Though he who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live, and whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." So there's the two reasons. The foreshadowing of Jesus' own resurrection. It shows Jesus' power over death. That's the idea there. All right, questions? Yes, ma'am. Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's to make Jesus known, not just as a great prophet, but as the Son of God. Yeah. He groaned in the spirit, was troubled, and wept. And again, it seems odd in some ways that he isn't weeping because Lazarus is dead, but more the reaction of those that are still alive. It's not the dead man. It's not Lazarus being dead that makes him weep. It's the response of those that are still alive. It's very interesting. So, yes, absolutely. Well, not everyone who heard about this miracle was as excited about it as Mary and Martha. And the Jews, this is going to really seal the deal, seal the death warrant, if you will, that the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Jews, religious leaders of the day, they're saying, okay, this can't go any further. Something has to be done. And so what they decide has to be done is Jesus has to die. And this is the event. So we're going to look at verse 45. We're just going to continue where we left off there. Verse 45. Then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went away and told to the Pharisees and told them the things that Jesus did. Tattletales. Then the chief priest and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, "What shall we do? For this man works many signs. If we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." And one of them, Caiaphas, being the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish." Now this he did not say of his own authority, but being high priest that year prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for that nation only, but also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Then from that day on they plotted to put him to death. Therefore Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there into the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim, and there remained with his disciples. And the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went from the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Then they sought Jesus and spoke among themselves as they stood in the temple, "What do you think, that he will not come to the feast?" Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, that they might seize him. So the mold has been, the die has been cast to the road for the cross. We're now in full swing. Why did this miracle anger the Jews so much? Why were they so mad? Yeah, it threatened their power. They're not top dog anymore because now we've got somebody that can raise the dead. That trumps the ability to interpret the Torah scroll. And if you can raise the dead, that's that nobody's going to listen to the rabbis on the Sabbath anymore. If you've got someone speaking who can raise the dead. It was an impossible miracle to disprove. Here's the thing. If you tell me, well, let me think. If I watch a televangelist on Sunday morning, and I'm getting ready for church, and I turn on a televangelist, and he says, he has a guy come up on stage, and, he says, this guy's one leg is shorter than the other, and he walks like this, and I'm going to put my hand on him and heal, and he can walk. Was he healed? Was he not? I don't know. If you say this man was deaf here, and he can't hear, but now he can. I don't know. Could he? I don't know. Was he really deaf? Is it really a miracle? I don't know. You take me to the cemetery of somebody who's been dead and in the grave 4 days, and this Jesus man stands at the tomb and calls him forth, and he comes out alive after he'd been dead 4 days. Everybody had seen him die. Everybody had seen him buried. Now he's alive. They have a dinner party. In chapter 12, they have a dinner party, and Lazarus is there, and Jesus is there, and Lazarus is there. Wouldn't you like to be at that dinner party? So where we were in Southeast Texas, one of the churches hosted Don Piper to come speak. He's the guy that wrote 90 Minutes in Heaven. Little old country church that, I don't know, they probably didn't run no more than we did on Sunday morning. I mean, this church, it packed it out, man. You couldn't have squeezed another person in there if they were a junior high girl standing sideways. You couldn't have fit nobody else in that auditorium because everybody wanted to see the one that was dead and come back to life. Now, Lazarus wasn't dead for 90 minutes. He was dead for 4 days. Don't you know they want to ask him some stories? What was it like? What was it like when Jesus called your name and you come back to life and walked out of there? You can't disprove that. And they hated him for it. They had an opportunity. You can't deny the facts, but rather their solution, rather than believe in him, let's just kill him. And then if you look in the, skip the second question there, and then the third one is, why did the Jews want to kill Lazarus? They did. In verse 10, they seek to, I'm in 12:10 now, the chief priest plotted to put Lazarus to death also. Now this is pretty bad. We're going to not only kill Jesus, we're going to kill Lazarus because Jesus brought Lazarus back to life. We can't disprove it. I mean, this is crazy. Lazarus dies. They put him in the tomb. Jesus brings him back to life. They want to kill Lazarus and Jesus. They kill Jesus. Jesus comes back to life. I mean, what? It's just crazy. But they can't disprove that miracle, and they're afraid that because of that, his popularity will spread and we'll lose our power. Huh? No, they cared about helping themselves. Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I mean, they believe in the resurrection, but they don't want to do it. They don't believe in Jesus, the resurrection through Jesus, though. Well, they could, and that's what they say. They're afraid the Romans are going to come and take our place away. Yeah. Which just seems so, but yet people do that today. I mean, people are more concerned with their position than their relationship with Christ. Going back, how did the high priest speak prophetically? If you look at verse 49 through 51, do you not, 50, do you not consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people and not that the whole nation should perish? So Caiaphas says this, and then John says he didn't say this of his own authority, but he speaks prophetically because he was the high priest, talking about the cross here. How is raising the Lazarus a fitting climax to Jesus' ministry prior to Passion Week? This will be the last miracle before he rides into Jerusalem for Passion Week. The last enemy is death. He's done it all. He's walked on the water. He's healed the sick. He's turned water to wine. He's made the blind see and the lame walk and the deaf hear. He's done it all. The last enemy is death. He's defeated that. So he's ready to ride into to Jerusalem. How is the raising of Lazarus significant for us as Christians today? Well, Jesus' power over death is just as significant for us today as it was 2,000 years ago. The same Jesus that raised Lazarus from the dead will also raise us from the dead one day. And that's why I often use this story when I'm preaching a funeral, because there is great comfort in that. And it's proof. It is a sign. John includes it as a sign, not just a miracle, but a sign. A sign accompanied by an I am statement. I am the resurrection and the life. So it is significant. I do have a brief video for you. I know I've held you over just a little bit. It's a 7-minute video. If you want to hang with me, we'll watch Dave Stott's summary of these events.
Jesus and his disciples were resting by the Jordan River when news came that his friend Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, was very